And I'm going to let Lawrence take it over from here. And we all need to mute ourselves again, except Lawrence and Larry.
All right, well, thank you, Ava, and welcome back, everybody. Good day. Hope it's going as great as it is for me. It's bright and sunny here in Palm Harbor, actually, not St. Petersburg, but I just wanted to let you know where I discovered Larry. It was through one of the many virtual shows we're all exploring right now. It's a trade show, if you're not aware of, called the Surf Show. I learned about it through my friends at Vizcaya, not expecting to find anything, but actually found some really great things at the Surf Show. It's normally held in Orlando, but now it's an online opportunity if you're interested. And Larry was presenting there as part of a website design webinar there. So I checked that out and found it quite helpful. And his expertise was apparent, and considering his positions with Crutchfield, Markle, and the University of Virginia Darden School of Business, it's no wonder. While Vice President of E-commerce at Crutchfield Electronics, they received a Best of the Web recognition from Time.com, Forbes, and Kiplinger's. In addition to his many web design and marketing accomplishments, Larry is also a teacher, lecturer, and consultant. Now presenting at the MSA for the first time, and hopefully not the last, Larry Becker and your museum's online store, Foundations for Success.
Thank you, Lawrence. And you know, I should mention, and I thought of this in a roundabout way, if you folks want to record this, that is fine with me. I'm gonna send Ava and Lawrence the slides when I'm done. But as you'll see, I really tried to customize this talk. So we're gonna go online and look at several museum store websites, and that's something that won't really come across in the slides as much. So like I said, feel free to hit record. And what made me think of that is it's funny because Lawrence said that he found this talk I gave at the Surf Expo, and as Lawrence recalled, that was news to me too. I had actually done it, I think, for a parent company who had syndication plans that that sort of included me but didn't include me. So it was good to know where I appeared, but really happy to share this with you. So when Lawrence,
Larry,
ahead,
can I just interrupt? I forgot to mention one other thing, and that's for everyone with questions to type them into the chat. So we can get those to you at the end. So we're going to try not to interrupt you like I just rudely did. But we'll
that's fine. That's fine. I feel like I'm at this place now where you could wake me up rudely at 2:45 a.m. and ask me to talk about online retail, and there are certain things that I would feel comfortable just launching into. So it was a good exercise for me, and I spent some time with this over the weekend looking. I looked at briefly at about a dozen sites for members of this chapter, and that was just to get a sense of where everybody was. And I see that, you know, some folks are transacting online, some folks are not transacting online. Of those transacting online, some have fairly polished presentations, others have presentations that look like they're going to be returning to them and, you know, upgrading. And that's not surprising. I think this is a moment that has caught everyone taking their own sort of inventory of where they are in digital capability. But I'm going to share my screen, and I'm just going to share the whole thing, and let me know when you can see it. And I'm going to, I think, hide this. So can you see?
Yep, we can see it.
Excellent. So this is what we're going to talk about. And like I said, this was a talk that I gave for, it was originally going to be for the annual retail show in Chicago, last June. And of course that changed because of COVID, and it became a virtual talk that made its way to different places for the same folks. But what we'll do today is we'll look at these ideas about retail, and then see what makes the most sense for this group. So this is something, that was on my mind, I guess, in May. And I feel like we're still, as a retail community, and I don't know how you folks think of yourselves more as retailers or as museum curators, but I think everyone got punched in the mouth. And I don't know if Mike Tyson is an authority on best practices in e-commerce or, curation, but I think his words were apropos. And at the same time, there is this like great moment of opportunity, I think, right now, because what I saw in the retail community is no matter where you were in your evolution or sophistication as an online retailer, the whole kind of shutting down of bricks and mortar and people having different reactions as individuals and consumers to quarantine really put everyone on kind of a level playing field. Certainly some were playing catch up more than others, but everyone's sort of learning this new consumer environment. And retailers are, having been in this field through several recessions, incredibly resilient. And when I look, as, an online visitor and walking around different towns, as a consumer, if you will, of museums, I think that the museum community is also really resilient. What I had a chance to see, where I am in Charlottesville, Virginia, is a lot of the historic presidential homes, all, like the museum community, trying to reinvent themselves, their strategy, their mission, their education programs, as well as their retail outlets for a new environment. So I think there is really this opportunity to stand up. This is a quote. There's an animation here, which I guess I missed the boat on. But what's supposed to, the quote is from William Gibson, who's a kind of a science fiction futurist writer. And he wrote the book that Blade Runner is based on. And this is like 30 years ago. And he said at the time, the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. So you can kind of play Mad Libs with that and say the future of online retail is here. The future of museum retail is here. It's just not evenly distributed. And what that means is that some of the people in this space are quite sophisticated in their execution, and others of us are really just trying, to figure out. It's just kind of like the world is flat and lumpy. The future is here now, but your vantage point and what's available to you really depends. Consumers also are not evenly distributed, although I think their expectations, because of the pandemic era, have been accelerated. I think McKinsey described it as like 10 years of e-commerce and digital acceleration within a 6-month period. 46% of US consumers trying out a new brand or retailer within the first 3 months of the pandemic in the United States. So there is real opportunity. And when I thought, and forgive me as a heathen novice, but this is what it looks like to me, from the outside, as I think about the opportunities for the museum store community. First, like the other divisions in any museum, there's going to be a focus on revenue. And obviously for museum shops where it was totally a bricks and mortar operation, the need to transition people and to have an online store is acute. And the parent institution, because so many museums are shuttered across the country, is going through the same, crisis. There's an evergreen opportunity too that I think transcends COVID. And this is something that Lawrence and I spoke about when we first met, is this relationship between your brand as a museum store and the brand of your parent institution, and how that really affects the messaging that you put out there on your online store, and how you merchandise your product. That's still in play. I think what's in accelerated play right now is that phrase that's used a lot in industry, is this notion of digital transformation. How does the whole organization, how does the entire museum really begin to look at its mode of serving its constituents? And while we've typically done that in physical space, how do we do that digitally? And I think that museum stores really have an opportunity to shape institutional strategy, because there's so many templated processes out there already, ranging from good e-commerce packages that you can use and customize, and the ability to quickly begin to, reap some recovered revenue through an online store, I would think puts, the museum store owner at the table with the other strategic leaders in the organization, and really shaping, how is this digital transformation going to occur? And what is the relationship between the commerce and the education programs and the vegetation programs, all of which need to suddenly be a lot more robust online. And from the little bit I've learned as an observer, crossing paths with other museums, mostly up in the DC area over the last, decades, through the e-commerce world, and in some brief conversations with Lawrence and Ava, that certainly the store is as much an effort of curation and as mission driven as the parent institution. And I think that part of your success as you begin to bring the stores, the museum stores online, is going to be about how clearly you're able to really express that notion of curation and mission when you bring your online store in front of visitors to the museum site. So those are sort of the big, hairy, and roughly formed ideas that were running through my head as I revisited this talk about retail fundamentals, to share it with you. So we're going to talk briefly about 7 things. We'll do some level setting in terms of website usability. We're then going to talk about navigation. We're going to talk about home pages. We're going to talk about selling propositions. We're going to talk about product detail pages on your site and how they function as home pages as well. We're going to talk really briefly about the relationship between your institution's shopping path and the other paths, the education path on your museum's website. And we'll talk a little bit about analytics, specifically about the voice of customer analytics and how that can really inform what your store is about. So there's a lot to cover. There's also a lot we're obviously not covering. I'm not going to get into platform selection. I'm pretty platform agnostic, and I think there are reasonable out-of-the-box solutions, more so than ever before, that you guys are already pretty sussing out. This is more about how can you bring a strategy towards using those tools. We're not going to get into as much on sort of the nuts and bolts of merchandising and using those tools, although we'll touch on some of that just by way of the examples I'm going to show you. So this is something that I think I have probably been saying for about 20 years, that this notion of your website being your brand. And in times of pandemic, now more than ever. And what I mean by that is, traditionally retailers, and I would say obviously museums as well, were able to rely on the experience in the physical world as really manifesting what the organization was about. It's the direct expression of organizational values. When the physical space is closed, there's obviously far more onus on the website. So no matter what your museum is saying it's about, it's the experience that someone is having on your website that's really going to define the brand. And ditto for the museum store. You know, what I've seen over the last 6 months or so as we've been walking through this new world is museums coming to grip if what more can I put on my homepage besides saying, stop, we are not open now, which is not really a great brand message. And certainly we want to communicate to people what they can't do and why, but the more we can offer an alternative and a parallel online experience, you know, the healthier our long-term future is going to be. So no matter what we're saying, it's that direct experience with the website that people really carry away as a brand expression. And as you're making decisions as business leaders, as nonprofit leaders, organizational leaders, there's always this balance as you're investing in your website between what the organization really needs and what the customer or the stakeholder really needs, the external stakeholder. And what's implicit in that is that you really need to understand your customer in order to align their needs with your organization's needs. And I think that this group on the phone here now, many of whom have experience in the physical world of museum stores where you interacted directly with customers, again, really positions you quite well to have a voice at the leadership table as, you know, the institution decides what the future experience is going to be like, because you bring that information about the voice of the customer and the voice of, I'm looking for a parallel world for the museum goer, but that museum supporter really expects from the web experience. So a lot of a good e-commerce experience starts with a good usability experience. And this is one of those areas where, you know, the future is here, it's not evenly distributed. We've all had that experience of some websites being far easier to shop than others. And I'm all for having a unique reason that someone should buy from your website. And I'm all for really expressing the unique mission of your organization on your website. In order for that museum store to be shoppable, in order for that online museum to be navigable, the converse really is that you need to follow patterns, because users spend 99% of their time on websites that aren't yours, on e-commerce experiences that aren't yours. So the more that you can follow those design conventions, which a lot of the increasingly out-of-the-box platforms kind of put in place for you, the more you can offer that consistency, the easier it's going to be for someone to discover what's unique about your selling proposition. So I think you want to be unique in your offer and conventional in your design. So the first actual element of web design and e-commerce design that we're going to talk about is the navigation in your online store. And you can think of the navigation really as store signage, you know, like the signage above the aisle in a physical retail space. And it's really this opportunity to show your visitor to your website, hey, here's how I, the merchant, here's how I, the curator, think about my store's offering. So it really reveals your point of view. At the same time, you really need to make sure that people don't get lost on their way to cart and checkout, and also, you know, strike a balance between offering them things that could increase the size of their basket while keeping them oriented. So always being able to answer that, where am I, where can I go, where have I been? And there are tools like, you know, really clear and concrete headlines, like breadcrumb trails, like link style, that really help your online shopper navigate. So this is the first example, obviously not a museum example. I was looking at, obviously many more people doing yoga and trying to be healthy in place at home during this. And just I'm going to go very quickly through this because I think the museum examples are obviously going to be more relevant. But you can see how Gaiam quickly is giving sort of a nouns and verbs orientation in their primary navigation. This navigation, with the exception of apparel, which is a lot of what they sell, is really by activity. And then I can think of the what I'd find beneath. And sure enough, as I then expose this in this sort of mega menu, which we'll see on one of the museum examples that we look at as well, that active balance is suddenly a lot more apparent, and these are all the different things that I would need. What's nice too is you can see that blend of product when I'm looking here, and I don't know if you can see my cursor, I hope you can, at balance boards and standing mats and stools, but then the resources, all these articles that are then promoting why someone would want these things. And then some very of the moment merchandising, especially when kids are going to school at home with the flexible seating options for a home classroom. You know, Navigate though, as much as it's store signage, you're really helping someone, as I said, not get lost, and you're guiding them towards conversion. There's this notion of scent, you know, like think of your shopper as a bloodhound. They're really trying to find their way to the product that's going to meet their needs, and then leaving those breadcrumb trails so they can track scent to what they need to do to buy it. So sure enough, when I was shopping for dumbbells and I find it, you know, in the visual merchandising here and in the navigation, I'm zeroing down, and then I don't know if you can see in the small print, they're leaving this trail so I understand where I'm oriented. I'm within a home gym collection. I can easily get back to home. I can find my way to the weights I want. This that same navigation trail, breadcrumb trail persisting here, I add it to my cart, I'm ready to check out. And what's notable here, and there's something to watch on your own sites, by the time I get to checkout though, all that other navigation goes away. So I can really simply focus only on making that purchase. It's almost hermetically sealed. So let's take the first of what I, with a lack of imagination, I'm calling museum moments, and look at a couple of museums that I thought had some interesting navigation going on in their site. Now, I think for the museum shop, the first thing to keep in mind is how is the visitor to the website going to be able to find my store? And I'm sure that's something that you folks are negotiating with. And can you guys see the Tate up here pretty well, nodding? So we're on the Tate site, the Tate Modern from the UK. And what's really nice is within this very sparse navigation, it's very easy for me to find the shop option. And this is a convention among most of the museums I looked at, although not all. Then when I go to the shop option here, now I'm within the Tate Store's navigation. And the first thing that jumps out at me about the Tate Shop's navigation is you have this very sort of expected, I'll call it navigation by nouns, you know, merchandising of prints, books, fashion, things for the home. And that's all great. And you can see how they're using these conventions of online retail where you have some visual merchandising built in so you can highlight featured products and among all the subcategories. But what's really key, and this goes back to the notion that museum store managers are curators, is the direct tie to exhibitions as an element of the product navigation. And then if I, for example, go down within this navigation to the Andy Warhol exhibit, which is a current exhibit at the Tate, what's great is that when I come down here, yes, I can buy tickets for the exhibition, but because I'm in the shopping environment, all the relevant products, or a selection of them that I can purchase, are being merchandised in tandem with what's going on. So I think that is something really important, to negotiate with your counterparts on the institutional side is how do you get that syncing with the exhibitions going on in the museum to the products you offer. And you also see that, since it's October, we're already talking about Christmas. So seasonal merchandising is also in place there. Looking at the next example was the San Francisco MoMA. Now here I was surprised that, there's no shop visible by default. And this is a museum I've been to several times that has a really strong retail arm. So I was a little surprised by that. You really have to look for shop, but you do find it. And again, when you get there, the reason I pulled this one out as an example is another opportunity, especially for folks on this call who are part of historic and tourist destinations, is it's really neat how they are bringing the area, the geographic location, into their merchandising and their presentation of products. Clearly, I'm in the Bay Area. Also, you can see, so you have the San Francisco inspired here. Again, the exhibition products, things that tie to current exhibitions, and what you might call the logo shop, everything that has the SF MoMA logo on it. And this was all at a glance. I was able to take that information in about 3 seconds once I got to the store. And the average time someone's spending on any website right now is hovering around 15 seconds. And that's what we're up against. So that clarity of the labeling is so important. There's nothing ambiguous or clever about this labeling. It's what it is, and that's what shoppers want. And you can see there's also a nod, I think, to where we are now with people spending more time at home, puzzles and games up front, workspace, which is increasingly a home workspace up front. And speaking of that home workspace, that was one of the things, and I think this is the right example, of the Philadelphia Museum. Actually, no, that'll come later. But what was cool about the Philadelphia Museum, and I went right to the store here, is, let's see, obviously a product of the moment, and we're seeing this on a lot of museum sites now. And the other thing about this is more of a homepage tour, and we'll get to that. There was something else I wanted to show you guys. Yeah, maybe that was it. I think I pulled these guys in because I thought the masks were quite interesting. Art on demand is an interesting category too. Those are, I believe, customized prints. So a quick look at navigation. I'm going to talk in a moment about homepage. And before we can even talk about any page, I wanted to lay out a principle that I heard a long time ago that really helped me a lot. And I don't know if some of you as marketers are familiar with Seth Godin, who's sort of a marketing philosopher while being exceptionally pragmatic. And about 25 years ago, he wrote a book about the web, at least 25 years ago. And he talked about you could really think of every page on the World Wide Web as an offer page. And when you begin to do that, and you think that your page, no matter what page you're designing on your site, really needs to quickly and clearly convey that offer, that is incredibly focusing. And some of these three are from Seth. Some are, I think, the stuff I've thought of over the years. I don't remember where these come from anymore. But the notion is that the offer is going to be one of three things. It's going to be buy something. It's going to be give me some information, like sign up for my newsletter, etc. Or it's going to be click further into my site. And that's it. And if you look at any page on your site and it's not clear what you really want your visitor to do in terms of those offers, there's probably a need for some refinement of design. So click further into my site. Really, that's probably the offer on most home pages, because a home page needs to quickly answer three questions. What can I do here? Why would I do it here and not somewhere else? And what do I do next? So as you look at your own home pages and the ones we're going to look at in a minute, think about those as a way to sort of structure the clarity of the design and the merchandising. What can I do here? Why would I do it here and not somewhere else? And what do I do next? So here's an example from a little while ago from Office Depot. Now, Office Depot has about 20,000 or I forget where the zero is, might even be like 200,000 SKUs. There is a lot here to organize. So certainly if these guys can organize their assortment, we who have, in the hundreds or maybe thousands of SKUs can do the same. So at a glance, they have here this message, and this was at the height of things being shuttered, that talked about how stores were closing, but notice it wasn't a stop sign. There's still an invitation to engage. And as you scroll down the page, what really goes on here, and I think this is applicable to you folks as well, is different ways to think about what I will find inside the store. So there's a seasonal take. This was around Mother's Day and a bunch of products that are going to be around Mother's Day. Now we're looking at Halloween and Christmas. There was the notion of solutions. Now, certainly Home Depot lends itself to that, but I think that is an interesting merchandising principle for museums or any retailers to think about now too. How are people using your products? Is that another way that you can portray them? But what I think is most relevant to any retailer is if you look at the bottom of their homepage here, what they really do is they are unpacking that navigation. And if you remember how we looked at some of these larger museums like the Philadelphia Museum of Art and the Tate, where they had all those subcategories, well, if I can only show this much by default, these 7 choices categories by default in my primary navigation, can I unpack the greatest hits of that categorization in the body of my homepage? So let's look now at some museum stores that are using some of those techniques. The first one we'll look at is the Met, which is in itself sort of a mega store, not only in terms of the resources available to them, but in the selections available. So when I first come here, I'm in the Met store, and immediately the lead on this homepage is a direct tie to a current exhibition. And there's nothing, that strengthens the brand more than tying your product to that exhibition, and it's shop the show. And that is language that I think anyone here can pick up and look for the variations on. And then these are just different sort of classic merchandising techniques of get inspired. But again, what jumps out to me is, let's look at what's here. These necklaces, scarves, stationary home decor, and all of those are really subcategories of the merchandising that's going on at a higher level in this mobile-friendly menu, which is tucked in on the side. So there's some real lessons about repackaging and unpacking the navigation on the homepage on this page from the Met. And of course, top sellers, obviously good fodder, customization, email offer, but also of note right here, quite clear on this fairly long scroll page, given as much real estate as about 2 product tiles, is the tie between the museum store revenue and the mission of the Met. And that's something that I think most folks here have the opportunity to showcase as well. Why would I shop here or somewhere else? Because let's face it, for all of us, maybe 20% of the products are exclusive, and 80% of them may be either other local or even national or overseas source products that kind of fit in with the collection. So making that direct tie between the institution seems quite valuable. Let's look at an institution now with decidedly less deep pockets than the Met, in case you guys are rolling your eyes that I showed someone with this level of a treasure chest. Tenement Museum in New York. Very different vibe, very different scale of museum. Great museum, by the way, if you've ever been there. But again, quickly, saying, that who knew that tenement-oriented products could become part of a holiday gift guide? But it's actually quite credible how they do that. And as I move through their homepage carousel, again, here's what's going on in the world right now. Here's how we're there for you. Here's how you can shop with us. And you can pick up curbside. Great tie to the local area, the region in which this museum actually lives. Now, this ties to products about food, but it evokes the environment, which is itself now kind of a trendy tourist destination in New York. And then featured products, how to find the store. Really nice way to tie to the neighborhood, though, and a seasonal gift guide. The other homepage I wanted to look at, I thought, now this is kind of an explosion of hard to read text from the Museum of Contemporary Art in Chicago. Regardless of how you feel about their aesthetic, though, there's a lot of good stuff going on here in terms of how they're thinking about their homepage and navigation. Again, a very popular current product that they're showing that they have kids masks as well. Joshua Veeds, who is an artist in exhibition now, tying that current product back to the collection of the museum and showing again what you can do with the product, different positioning of the product. Again, not just by nouns, but by verbs as well as what's going on this page. And what I thought was really cool is you can see how amidst their, typical categories of art objects and books and fashion, work from home, suddenly a much more important category. And they've repositioned their merchandising on their homepage and in their primary navigation to bring that front and center for their visitor. So we started with these examples of the Met and these examples of Home Depot, and we're talking about these organizing principles of categories and subcategories and collecting them on your homepage. Okay, most of us don't sell 2 million SKUs. So let's look at an example of a store that sells only 1 or 2 products and how they're going to market. This is a very fancy high-tech jump rope, cross rope. And what struck me about this page is how well they really lead with their selling proposition. With a headline and an image, I know what this is about. This is a fun workout that I can do anywhere, even at home. Super relevant when gyms are closed or not perceived as being that safe. So this is a way that they quickly adapted the positioning of their product to the moment and introduced that notion that I wanted to talk about of a unique selling proposition. And you can see that as they lay out their unique selling proposition, it's adjacent to a call to action of having, yes, oh, this is what I can do, and here's immediately how I could start doing it. And as I scroll down their page, they're sort of unpacking their value proposition, why at a feature and benefit level, their product is better, a little science, and again, ending with that call to action. But I think about that unique selling proposition, and then how do they arrive at that? And this is something that I speak about with retailers a lot, because there is that notion that for most retailers, the product they're selling is a commodity. And whether you want to acknowledge it or not, the competition is just a click away with items that are exactly the same or close enough. Now, I think museum stores in many cases have this incredible leg up when you offer products by artists who appear in the collection, by local products. But I think it's really important not to take for granted that the visitor to your store understands how your curation process works and that tie to the exhibitions. there's this whole piece that goes away once someone is out of the building. Because, and I meant to mention this during navigation, but I'll mention it now. When I think about the physical space of a museum, as you folks know so well, the shop is typically positioned very strategically relative to the entrance and the exit and key exhibits. And that positioning also really reinforces a connection and a value proposition. Well, when you're online, your primary navigation needs to quickly help with that findability, but you may need to be more explicit about the effort you put into curating your online store and why your customers should care about that. So organizations will go through, months long, sometimes year organization exercises understanding what the organization's reasons are to believe and how you express that in a brand pillar and a headline, how we speak to our visitors, what we're really offering. And I think in museums, there needs to be a parallel and coordinated effort between the mission of the shop and the mission of the institution. But for the sake of being really focused on what's happening on your online store, let's just be clear among ourselves as why, briefly, someone should buy from you and not your competitors. And it's really important that even museum stores understand that you have competitors, despite the fact that you get to bring the name of your institution and all that brand connotes, because everything is available online. And even if you have a good understanding of the kind of person who supports your institution and supports your museum shop, there are probably a half dozen other retailer sites, either from museums or not, that they frequent for a curation that they consider similar. And the reason I think that you really want such a clean user experience, and why you're really following those conventions of here's how store navigation works, here's how a shopping cart works. That's like the furniture. And you don't want people bumping into the furniture while you're really laying out your offer. And that offer is why someone should buy from you. And that offer is the unique curation and merchandising and product selection that you're bringing to your online shopper. So let's look at how some key museums are expressing that selling proposition in a very concrete way. We'll start with the Museum of Modern Art in New York. And this I'm sure you guys are familiar with this fantastic store and website. It used to be a fantastic print catalog too. I don't know, but one of the things that I love about their merchandising here, and you see this in other museum stores here, is what is exclusive, especially when you start to deal with the notion of commoditization. Many museums having some similar feel to the jewelry and books and educational products they offer. What can I only find here? And many of the folks on this call, I think, have that same advantage. And what I can only find here isn't necessarily the logo wear only. Maybe there's other stuff too. The other thing I liked about the MoMA page, let's see if I can get it to scroll a little differently, is as I make my way down, maybe did I click somewhere? Bear with me. Okay. I make my way down this homepage. Again, the exclusives, but here they're kind of laying out why someone should buy from here. And they're doing it in traditional retailer terms. This almost used to be like the letter from the president at the front of a direct marketing catalog. How do we choose the products for this store? What informs our unique point of view? And this is curation. This is something that everyone on this call is quite familiar with. and they're not being bashful about it. And they have one of the most unique assortments in the world, but I think they're still finding it's worth the page real estate to lay that selling proposition out there in black and white. And they're even encouraging you, one of their authors on this page is click further into my site, because there's a story to tell here about the Museum of Modern Art's store and its relationship. Again, now we're going right to the relationship between store mission and institutional mission, and how that affects the merchandising and curation. And then back to mission with the democratization of design. And last, in a very on-the-nose way, when you spend your dollars here, here's where they're going. I thought that was really powerful. The other shop, just a quick look at how, again, an institution with more, presumably more modest means is still carrying that message. The Autry Museum out west, Gene Autry, I guess, is somehow, his estate is somehow behind this, but great museum of Southwestern culture. And again, on the homepage, this is literally the first message on the homepage. Before I could even see product, my purchase helps support the Autry. And another great technique that I see on many of these sites is the value of membership. Something that you folks all have the opportunity to do as the whole institution is going through digital transformation is, how do I help the core institution? Well, I can be pitching membership. And the reason I'm pitching membership at this moment is because if someone's looking at this Navajo vase, maybe they're going to spend, 10% less if they combine that with a membership purchase. I thought that was pretty well done. So we just looked at a bunch of examples on home pages that all neatly laid out their unique selling proposition. The reality is, and I think that as you folks start selling more and more online and start using, some of the things we're not talking about today, but the online customer acquisition techniques of paid search and natural search and your social media advertising, you're going to be pointing people towards not only your homepage, but the individual product pages on your site. And what that really means is that the product pages on your site really need to do, at some level, the same work as your homepage. Those pages also need to answer, of course, what can I do here and what do I do next? But that why here and not somewhere else? Because again, just do some quick mental inventory of your own now. How much of your assortment is truly unique to your site, and what is the percentage that could be bought somewhere else online? So that means that you are really competing with your competitors for them buying that artifact from you. So why here and not somewhere else? One retailer that does this quite well is my alma mater's. It's really the first online store that I worked on for many years. And what was interesting here is, and this company has only continued to grow and become more successful. And you know what? They're selling stuff that everybody has. How is this company doing something like $350 million a year, up from about $250 when I was there about 10 years ago? How are they doing that when Amazon and Best Buy are selling the same stuff? It doesn't make sense. But they have a very clear value proposition of selling on information and service. And they're selling information-rich products, and they understand that. So if you look at this product detail page, there's a lot of stuff that any retailer could learn from. Look at just the design, the proximity next to add to cart of all the information I would need. This is sort of the table stakes of good e-com as you guys get online. Do you have it? When can I get it? How much does it cost? You can get it in 2 days. I have it in stock. Here's how much it costs. And here's 47 points of social proof from these reviews of why you should buy it. What's also interesting here, and I thought about this, that this is a real opportunity for some of the folks on this call. They have sort of brought the curator front and center on a pair of headphones made overseas because they have a bylined writer on this page. And I think it's an interesting idea to play with for museum stores. Is there an editorial point of view? And if so, would it ever make sense to give it a name? When you go down, obviously, there's a plethora of details and a review available. And again, there's somebody here. It's like the curator and the merchant has been brought front and center, again, with all the other tools that I would expect to have on a page if I'm buying technology, you know, the videos, the specs, the details, supporting articles. I wanted to look for a moment, and I guess there's a few examples I pulled here of some museum pages that I thought had interesting product detail pages. I want to look first at a page from the Getty, I think we're going to go to. So the Getty, this page sort of does it all with copy and an image. This is a floor clock. It's fascinating too. I can't tell if this, when I do this scrolling, I don't know if you guys can see if this is, so they've got some interesting animated GIF that's like showing the motion of the clock. It's kind of hypnotic. But there's this notion online, and I think it's true to agree, that people don't read online, they scan. And it's really important as you guys begin to put copy out there. This is copy that I actually read, and I think I read it for two reasons. First, it's broken up classically, funny classically with the Hercules, but classically in the sense of classic online retailing with a bulleted list, which immediately makes the copy more scannable. But this then is the sort of classic catalog narrative, but what it's talking about is it's directly tying it to the exhibit in the Getty Villa in the museum, and it just does a beautiful job of that. It's very clear, it's got an unmissable call to action, a very conventional looking add to cart. It doesn't tell me if it's in stock. It would be nice if it did, but it's not saying it's out of stock. And then beautiful just merchandising of all the other relevant products in that collection. And in part of every footer on the Getty Museum Store's site is they always say this. Here's the mission of the museum on the store's page in a succinct one-sentence scannable chunk, and my purchase supports that mission. Unmissable, part of every page, did not interfere at all with my buying process, but it's there. The next one is the Museum of Contemporary Art. I think we're still in LA. I like this page too. I'm starting on the home page too. They do a really nice job of here's all their navigation merchandising for the store, including the exclusives. Beautiful job of, oh, if they could tell that if I'm scrolling up and I'm hovering here, I'm probably looking for something. Maybe I'm looking for the parent navigation of the museum itself. That was really well done. Product of the moment, again, I liked the way that when I went to, let me see, this is what I wanted to show you. Story, featured products, Wear Mocha Kids, the masks. Again, when I look at this individual mask, tying the mask to the designer, who happens to be an artist who's currently on view at the museum, who they commissioned to do this tie-in product, telling me why it matters, artist profile within there, anything I would need to know to buy it. Again, the related products in the collection, and I think that's all we wanted to cover on this one. Did like the navigation and tying that one to the connection. Let me see, the next one I wanted to look at, oh, the Whitney. The Whitney is, one of my favorite museums. What's cool about this product detail page is, now again, imagine yourself landing on this because maybe you searched for that artist, or maybe the Whitney was promoting that on social media. Maybe this is a product that you have a similar product in mind you're promoting on social media. So I land here and immediately it's easy for me to see, okay, here's what I can do here. I can see this print, nice, big, beautiful image, which is a must in your category. Clear how to add it to bag. Oh, here's what else they sell, visible at a glance without impinging on the real estate of the page. Oh, I could save $10. They're making it clear as can be the benefits of membership in the parent institution. I could also sign up and presumably stay in touch. But really nice way to show the member price without any lack of clarity here. I thought that was really straightforward and well done. And Art Institute of Chicago. Okay. Hope I'm not making you guys dizzy with the toggling back and forth. I thought this was the cleanest way to get all this into one talk. So Art Institute of Chicago, interesting. Again, we've been seeing this pattern now of exclusives, logo shop, typical nouns that I would expect. We'll come back to stories in a second. But if I go ahead, and what else do they have here? Special offers. There must be a product here that caught my eye. Let's see. Let's look at the bookends. Oh, I had this in my cart from yesterday. Let's see. Oh, here, again, regular pricing, member pricing for every size of this t-shirt. Reference to the iconic work found in the institution, related products, and an opportunity to see other categories. So we looked at that custom print, and all the products that we've looked at so far have been beautiful. Many of you are going to be in the position of launching online stores with staffs of none or one, I suspect, and the photography assets are going to be something to completely, perhaps rethink as you sell more online. And that's going to be really important because you're representing the product as well as indirectly the institutional brand. You may not have a graphic designer in-house. I think the templates that you're going to get from online platforms will take you part of the way. But anytime that you get into customization, there's going to be a need for a designer, and I encourage you to hire someone, with those skills. There's a lot available freelance now, and people who can work with the various platforms like Shopify, BigCommerce, etc. But some principles that I heard a long time ago that stuck with me, and not from like Mork and Mindy Robin Williams. It's different Robin Williams who wrote a few books about design. Here's a little cheat sheet in terms of when you're looking at a web page, 4 attributes that mean a lot in terms of web design. Contrast. People are confused online by things that are kind of the same or kind of different. High contrast, not only literally with color, helps you navigate on a page, but also literally in terms of, is something different from the other objects on the page, or is something similar? If one object on the page is the product and the rest are categories, they should look quite different. They should contrast. Alignment. Everything on the page, every object on the page should align with something else on the page. Repetition. If there's a certain something that people have to learn about how your category navigation looks, let it always, repeat itself and be the same and have that consistency. And proximity. Things that are similar should be next to each other. Things that will be useful to me when I'm trying to complete an action should be nearby as I move my mouse. Think again of that buy box on Crutchfield's page where everything I needed, availability, price, or in the museum's member price was all right there. Harp. And of course, you could rearrange those letters to spell something else and you'd get the results of not applying good design principles. Back on Crutchfield's product page, you can see again, they're actually weaving in reasons to shop with them, an expression of the unique selling proposition on that product detail page. And they're weaving in, again on this transactional page, an article on Buying Guide, and it's actually a, what's the word I'm looking for? It's actually a bylined article. So why would I do that? It's this notion of your visitor, especially to an institutional site, has a shopping path, and there's also a learning path in the museum. Now, to the extent that you have influence on that, it's something worth thinking about as you consider the navigation to the overall site. So when I think about that, let's look at this Getty blog page. So here's actually, this is the Getty's blog. This isn't the Getty's store blog, it's the Getty's blog, and it's called The Iris. But one of the recent entries was a kid's guide to adventures on Mount Olympus. And it's really just, it's kind of product advertorial done very tastefully, referencing a Greek mythology tour at the Getty, and then linking directly to the product pages where relevant products that will help a child bring home that experience are offered. If your institution has a blog, this is a great place to think about how can that be used to tie the product to the exhibition, to the content, and have a clear linking strategy among those elements. Similar thing going on in the Art Institute of Chicago on their blog. A recent piece about, sort of self-care on people's mind as they're spending more time at home. So they did a little editorial merchandising of taking several products from the shop. And it's just another way to shop, a more content-based way to merchandise. Something to think about. The last two things I'm going to talk about, and I realize I've taken a lot of time, and I think we'll still have time for questions, certainly. This is a classic look at sort of the web analytics universe, and it's a diagram that was originally made by a guy named Avinash Kaushik, and he was an analyst at Intuit, and he's one of the first people who really pioneered web analytics, and Google hired him. And I think his official title is like Google Analytics Evangelist now. But when you guys are setting up your shops, you're going to be looking a lot at this outside circle, clickstream. You're going to use Google Analytics, which is a fine tool. It's free. It just needs to be set up properly. Think about, as you set up your Google Analytics, am I able to track the paths between the institutional website and whatever subdomain or subdirectory the store is on? That's where there's potential to have data nightmares that are out of scope of this conversation, but just note to self, stick a pin in that. When I set up my Google Analytics, am I able to see how people are moving between the store and the core site? That will be useful. You set it up as two separate sites, it's going to be more work on the analytics site. But the main point I wanted to make here is people get really bogged down or spend a lot of time on who clicked where, and you do sort of things like basket analysis, how many items in the cart. That's all really good. We want to be focused on conversion and revenue. This is really important too, voice of customer. So think about the tools available to you, whether it's, intercept surveys on the site, surveys to membership. Is there a membership survey that's going out from the institution? Is there an opportunity for the store to get a couple of questions in there, things you need to know? Conversely, as you folks are talking to people and customers on the front line, what can you be sharing with the institution that would help them? It's really important because it's if you only look at the click stream, you get all the what people are doing. when you talk to people about why they're shopping the site, why they're not shopping the site, what they want it to be, then you get to the why that really makes you make meaningful changes. The last thing I'll talk about is a really quick, I'll call it commercial for one of my passions, which is testing your site with real users. Now, I don't know how many quants are here. I'm not that quantitative, but I can tell looking at this site that if I test my site with about 5 users, and I mean just having them attempt to shop the site, think out loud, tell me what happens when they shop it. 5 people will tell me 85% of the problems. This is true. If I test my site with no users, I will get no insight. Many retailers, people with a lot bigger budgets than you, sadly still test their site with no users. The ones who are winning use regularly monthly usability testing. It can be done remote, it can be done on Zoom, and it can be revelatory. You can do it in the early stages with your prototype store, and you can do it continuously with your online store. You can combine a session of someone shopping your site with a quick entrance and exit conversation where you're asking those people really everything you really wanted to know about their relationship with the parent organization and how that might affect their thoughts about membership, donations, etc. So yes, we could do that by Zoom. You guys get it. So we talked about 7 things. We tried to incorporate some museum moments. You guys were incredibly patient while I talked nonstop for about an hour at least. And I really appreciate you inviting me to look at a category that I hadn't thought a lot about for a while, but once I connected with Lawrence and Ava, started to think about more, and it was really a pleasure, and definitely have a few minutes if you guys have some questions.
Larry, thank you. This is fantastic. I think so many of us are in the midst.
I can't hear you guys. I think you may be muted.
No.
Oh, maybe not. Oh,
I'm not muted.
Turned off my speaker. I can hear you now.
Okay. Thank you. This is fantastic. And so many of us are in the midst of designing websites right now or redesigning. And I'm sure you noticed as you were looking at some of our websites, you could tell.
Totally.
And I want to thank you because this is the timing of all of this was perfect to have you speaking, and we appreciate it. And I wanted to ask you one thing. I know that there are some questions, so I did want to ask you one thing. Since when we spoke originally, you said, I mean, we asked you to talk about this relative to museum and museum stores. And I'm just wondering if this has changed your, as you're looking online for things, are you looking a little more closely to museums, to museum stores than what you did before, now that you've been investing this kind of time into our presentation?
I think that's a great question. And I'm going to give you a very honest answer. The short answer is yes. And it's kind of a yes and. So here's what I think. So when I was doing that tour of all these stores, I saw a lot of stuff that I thought, oh my gosh, I could be so much more of a thoughtful gift giver in the next couple of months if I just remembered some of these stores. And I've got the list of these stores, and I've got the list of 12 or 15 Florida stores that Ava gave me. In fact, to the point of where you guys are, I forget, I don't know if the folks with the Tiffany Museum are on here. I was like, that's you. I was like, oh, I'm glad it's you, because I know you. I was like, darn, like I want some of this stuff. I'm a big Maxfield Parrish fan. But, that tension of like clicking, it's like, oh, I got to fill out a form. And I know I'm not going to do it. I know I'm not going to do it. And that hurts, I know. But let that be sort of like, this is where we are. This is sort of the wake-up call. Because where I am, if, sample size of 1, 3 kids, 2 in college, 1 at home, 1 an incredibly thoughtful gift giver, my oldest daughter. So I'm definitely going to tell to her, oh, here's this whole other avenue that I tuned into. But like so many families, and I think so many of your customers, we've been Amazon, and it's like, how do you get people to pay attention to specialty retail? Which is, and museums are this very special subset of specialty retail. So I think it's tough. So the answer is yes, but I think you guys have to be relentless in your quest to modernize and offer convenience.
So I want to say one more thing, and then I'm going to let Scott take care of the questions that we have.
Yeah, and I see them up here. Great.
And I'm not sure that you were on the call yet, but Rebecca Petrie mentioned earlier when she had just gotten on the call, when we were just talking, a few of us, that she was looking at the list of online stores for Museum Store Sunday, and she said, who would have ever known that there was a Gene Autry museum? And I thought it was pretty cool. I thought it was funny that was one of the museums that you actually found and focused on.
And then there's a Sequoia museum too, and I know that's a rough jump from, because it's Native American culture in the Sequoia Museum, which is, I think, part of your chapter, and also in the Gene Autry Museum. The Autry Museum is interesting too, because you can imagine how, as the world has changed in the last few decades, you can think that their mission has probably been pretty dynamic, and it's expressed in the merchandising too, right?
Scott, do you want to?
Sure. Thank you, Larry. I think you can see the questions, so I don't know that it's necessary for me to see them. But we do have the one from Ava about the equivalent, the curator's choice or director's choice being the equivalent of a good review.
I think that it is, I'm going to be an English major about this and say it's not the equivalent, but it's absolutely worth doing. Because, and I have another client who's actually a really big company, but faces the same dilemma that I think is underlying your question. It's like, gosh, we've got all these SKUs, and some of them simply aren't going to get a review. Some of them, really great ones, aren't going to get a review. So why don't we do, and they sell educational materials, why don't we do an editorial review? And that's great. So, and I think it's totally worth doing. It's not completely equivalent, because I think there is a mindset of people want, so-called social proof, and it's different if people who I think are like me in some way, or a consumer like me, places a review. That's one, way to foster it, but I would absolutely do what you're suggesting. And it may in your category be at least as valuable. So not the same, but I think totally worth doing. And it's exciting to think about, because I think you should be strategic too in terms of how you approach that. If you guys do curators review or, shopkeepers reviews, because, the 80-20 rule, and almost thinking of, where you're going to get the most bang for your bucks, because it's a much more artisanal process for you or Scott to write a review than it is for me to use a piece of third-party software that's just harvesting customer reviews. So,
to piggyback on that, is there a science to this curator? Is to get the attention and hold the attention? Like, are there a certain number of sentences that work better or less? Should you be extremely wordy or less wordy?
I think that's an excellent question. So when you think about copy in general on the web, and there's a great cheat sheet that if you Google Jakob Nielsen, J-A-K-O-B, and Nielsen, I think like the Nielsen ratings, he's sort of like the granddaddy of website usability. A lot of designers hate him because he's very extreme, but he does have some great prescriptions for writing for the web that have turned out to be more or less true over the decades. And it's all about really the formatting. So you could have a piece of copy, I'm showing like 12 inches copy, but how you break it up, your paragraphs need to be at least half as short as they would be even in a scannable piece of print. So you want to use subheads, you want to use bulleted and numbered lists, you want to break up those paragraphs, sparing use of bold, the concreteness of the headlines matter. Another great technique you can use online is this notion that if I have 500 words of copy, maybe I'm showing you 150, and I'm really using a journalistic approach of I'm telling you the most important stuff first. I'm not being like magazine clever and putting it on page 3 because no one's going to read it, but I can have a link that says read more. So it's all in that formatting of, can I get the most important information up front? At a glance, am I making it visible what is here if you capture my interest and I choose to read more?
Awesome, thanks.
Sure.
Dan had the question, is there suggestions on style of product that would be eye-catching rather than overlooked?
Style of product or product Q&A, did he say? I think he said product Q&A.
Yeah, Q&A.
So I think what Dan asked is similar to what you and I just spoke about. So I would say, if I had an FAQ of some kind on my actual product page, it was, I don't know, why should I buy jewelry from institution XYZ? I might have one relevant question within the basic product description and the answer there and the opportunity to then link to see the 5 other or have the page open to see the 5 other. But again, if you get into those principles of how to write for the web and how to format copy for the web, those carry over to Q&A as well.
Thanks. And I think you can see the next question from, let's see, I think Natalia, I'm sorry. What do you think is the, do you think it is important to have reviews for each product on the website, and is it worth using the ratings?
I think, the reviews are going to help. The problem is, for where this community is at right now, is it takes a while to build up a critical mass of reviews. So I would be looking for platforms or solutions that you would let you experiment for cheap or free. And then, and a lot of those platforms will give you ideas on how to maybe run incentives for soliciting reviews. I honestly think that it's like you want to sort of check the box and mind it. You certainly don't want to suppress anything because it does not have a review. Realize it's going to take time. And in the meantime, I would be coming up with my own, editorial or curator review systems and being honest about what it is and putting that out there. I'm looking at, we just launched our store site at the Norton, lots of areas. Oh, glad that was helpful. Will it help sales by adding a chat? Yeah, chat definitely helps. If you have a way of doing that cost effectively. I would think too, though, about the complexity of your product. Do I need chat to buy a pair of Tiffany earrings? Probably not so much as I needed to buy a TV. So what you do need, and what I think the underlying need, Natalia, under that question is, do I need to provide a way for people to reach me if they have a question? Absolutely. So if not a chat, is there a phone number that is clearly in the footer on every page or on every product detail page where someone can get help? Are the hours for customer support clearly given? And if you're wondering where to start chat, or where the phone number is most important, work backwards from your conversion funnel. Make sure if someone's checking out and they have a problem, they can quickly reach you, and then sort of bubble that up through the cart back to the end of the product pages, depending on your resources. Membership. Originally, we thought of linking the store page to join as a member. The issue I had was it would move people off the store. Yeah. So then you get back to what is the primary purpose of this page and what is my user's primary purpose when they're on this site? I think the examples we looked at, and like I said, I'll share this deck earlier. If you go back to if you go back to those pages, I thought they did a pretty good job of making that member price a by the way. You know, first of all, the discount is not life-changing, it's just good. And, you know, remember that the page's primary offer is to buy the product. You can show them that another price is available if they join. I would think about, is the process to join as clear as is friction-free as the process to buy the product? Because you don't want to start losing sales for a 20-screen join membership product. So you have to look at your individual situation and balance it. I would not create a separate Instagram for the museum store unless your member institution makes you do it, because really, you know, there's such competition for social media followers. Why not just merge the two, you know? Yeah, and I think what Kathy said, you know, with Shopify, opening links in another tab, if you have a secondary process for like joining or becoming a member or subscribing to an email. And, you know, it's kind of a bummer because one of the sites we looked at, when I went to them, they had a really nice email pop-up. And, you know, we all see those Shopify email pop-ups, save 10% if you give us your email. I guess it didn't load during a presentation because I'd done it, but go back, because that's another place where you can have that succinct tie to the mission of the institution. You know, sign up for our email list, you're supporting the museum, and you'll save 10% out of that. Well, great questions. Well, thank you guys. It was great to be here and to meet you, and I will send the slides to Ava and Lawrence, and I really hope to speak with you guys again.
Thank you. It was excellent. Thank you very much. And we appreciate all of your help.